Good. Okay. Good afternoon, and welcome to PushTalk. Today's topic is
supporting black businesses. Is it that chair? That's that chair. Okay, sorry. No, it's fine. So today we're talking about supporting black businesses. So we have not done a push talk, I don't think, with both companies up today. So we got both logos up today. So Newbie Corp, I know that we actually are going to be showing an ad today. Are we going to show the Ari ad today? The Ari interview? No? Working on it? No, it's not ready? Oh, okay. Cool. So first off, we want to just start off by saying that we are back to doing our business of the week. And our business of the week this week is, James?
Ari's Biscuit Bar.
Ari's Biscuit Bar.
Yes.
We are doing an ad, so just pay attention to our to our Newbie Corp page, where you'll get a chance to see the interview we did with Ari. It will be in the podcast, Dropbox and podcast videos. Disco. The interview we did with Ari about Ari's Biscuit Bar, that'll be going out later on today, as well as our promo of the week. So James, we're here to talk about supporting black businesses
Yes.
today.
Yes, we are.
Why is it so important that we support black businesses?
Got to keep that dollar rolling through our community through black businesses. When you look at the number of businesses, businesses of the business landscape, you see that certain communities, that the dollar in that particular community, if it should happen to be Hispanic, Latino, Asian, Jewish, the dollar flips
Right.
multiple times on top of it, on top of each other before it leaves the community. And that's what we need to be establishing in our own communities as black businesses and black business owners. And it's going to help create growth and wealth within our own communities.
Yeah, and I mean, most people don't even recognize, but the community that spends the most money in the American economy is the African American community.
Yes.
And imagine if we took back, we invested like the money that we're putting out to other businesses. Like, for example, most people don't even know, like most African Americans, I don't know about you, I buy Tide, right? I love Tide. I grew up on Tide. It's like my one washing powder, right? But there's a washing powder company based out of Atlanta that I don't remember the name of it right now, but there's a washing powder company based out of Atlanta that's African American owned.
Right.
So I recommend people, if you don't know about things that are going on in your community or going on in the black community, there's a website called shopblack.com where they have a whole bunch of different resources. And I literally just found out the other day that I was meeting with a pastor friend of mine, and they were like, my one of our members invited us over to come to their restaurant. And I was like, oh, so what kind of restaurant they own? And they own the Golden Corral. I mean, not the Golden Corral. What's the Golden Crust, right?
Okay.
So we have to figure out a way. I wish there was like a database or something that we had where people who like black business owners can go and submit to the database, and where I as a consumer know where I can go. Like if I want to support a black restaurant, if I want to support a black-owned Starbucks, right, where can I go?
Right.
Maybe that's something we can look into as far as the Newbie Corp is concerned.
Yes.
It may not be a bad idea.
No, it definitely has merit that we can go ahead and put it into, try to put it into action. This topic, of course, reminds me so much of the various destruction of black business communities over the last century, I guess, and how those who want to be in charge, or oppressors, if you will, have gone way out of their way to ensure that black businesses, black business owners do not take a foothold.
Right.
And just continue to try to destroy it. However, with this new day and age that we live in today, technology driven, it's that landscape has changed quite a bit, actually, because you don't actually have to have a brick and mortar.
Mobile, yeah, a lot of businesses switching to mobile.
Absolutely, and still be able to get a product sent out.
So I guess the question would be, do you think that most minorities or most African Americans don't support black businesses because they don't know where the black business is at? Or it's just that, have we become like, so, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I use the example of Thai, right? Mm-hmm. I've been on it, I grew up on it, right? I remember when it was the powder stuff and you get the little thing and pour it in, scoop it up in there and pour it in there, right? Is it that we just don't know about, like, other companies out here? Like, and I would have to admit, and this sounds bad, I know about the washing powder. I still have not converted over to using it yet because I'm still so caught up on what I know, right?
Yeah.
But you know, there's an old saying, like, those who know better do better. So maybe it's something I need to do better on, you know?
Right. And it's not just you. It's the majority of us. Mm-hmm. But I think lack of knowledge and understanding where to find it, and see if that particular product even exists, has been a detriment to our community as a whole, and not being able to find these particular products. You know, it's funny because you're talking about supporting black businesses, but hair care products is a $1 billion industry.
Yeah.
And only black, well, frankly, the majority of that is black or African American, female.
Yeah.
And business owners, you can almost count how, you know, you might use both hands to be able to count the number of black-owned hair product stores in your community. Well, we'll even just say your city. So if you're living in LA, there might be a handful, but by comparison to if you have 1,000 hair care product stores in that city, you know, maybe 10% might be black owned.
You know, I think that from a newbie corp perspective, I think that's something maybe we should look into.
Yes.
Maybe, and so I'll make a commitment that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have a platform on our newbie corp website where businesses that are minority owned will be able to sign up and have the information put in there. And if a person wants to come on and look, like, and say a restaurant in their black community or whatever, there'll be a list of places that they can go to.
Right.
I think that for us to have the conversation about it, you know, it's funny because we was on a Zoom meeting earlier today, and one of the pastors said, you know, love is not just a verbal word, it's an action word.
Yes.
So if we're going to talk about it, let's do something about it. So for a newbie corp perspective, I think that'd be a brilliant idea.
Yes.
And even let's use the platform newbie corp, but we'll try to make sure that we create that list, and if black businesses want to go in and register their business to be a part of that directory of that list, they can use our newbie corp website to do so. So we'll have a form out within the next couple of weeks, and then we'll do that. I think that'll be a great resource.
Absolutely. And again, we just want we here PushTalk, we want to remind folks that this is it's not just a black thing, this is a minority thing. So if you have a business, if you're actually tuned in and you're Asian, Hispanic, Indian, Arab, of Arab descent, African descent, it doesn't even matter. You please know and understand that when we're talking about minorities, we're not just talking about black,
right,
or African American. And so I want to make sure that our viewers and listeners understand that.
Yeah.
You know, far too often when people say minorities, they automatically assume black, and that's really not the case. So we just want to make sure that we, you know, reiterate that part of the conversation and what we are about.
Yeah, and most definitely. And so we don't want to, I do want to kind of shift to something that we're getting ready to do this weekend.
Yes.
So to kind of bring that into it, to bring that into perspective of what we're getting ready to do this weekend. But another shout out to our business of the week. And like I said, if you go to our Newbie Corp page, you'll see more about the business of the week. It's Ari's Biscuit Bar. And we'll also post her interview on there as well, since we don't have it ready for you today. We'll post it on there as well. It's cool. Yeah, it's cool. But we also want to make sure that we let everybody know PushTalk will be done every day starting Monday at 1 p.m. That's our goal, to try to do it every day. So, and if you have not done so yet, we have an app on, what's that thing called? Android and iOS. So download our app, our Black Push app, and we're working on a Newbie Corp app now. So shifting subjects. So we can remove Ari's Biscuit Bar because I don't want her to be associated with our protesting, right? Switching subjects. So we're getting ready to go. You and I will be in, where are we going, James?
Washington, D.C.
D.C., where the money's at. James and I will be in Washington, D.C., but our staff members will be here in Atlanta for what they call the March for Voting Rights. So it's in Atlanta, it's called the March for Voting Rights, and in D.C. it's called the March on Washington.
Yes.
But it's about voting rights, and it's about standing up and saying that we want to make sure that everyone has access and the right to vote.
That's right.
And some of and for people, and I harken on this so much, is the reason why voting rights is so important to me is that even when we think about, like right now we have President Biden, and President Biden is removing our troops from Afghanistan and removing people from Afghanistan.
Right.
That was a deal that was set up by the previous president for us to be out of Afghanistan, but by the end of this month, right? But it makes a difference who's in office and who's leading that charge, right?
Right.
When we left Vietnam, we didn't take anybody out of Vietnam but our soldiers, right? We got up out of there. We didn't take the people who helped us or anything. I think as of yesterday, they've gotten over 70,000 people out, and not all those people are Americans. Some of those people were Afghanistani people who actually worked for Americans and helped us become translators and helped us on the battlefield, right?
Right.
So it makes a difference who's in office, and I'm not saying I support anybody in particular, right?
Right.
But I do support the right that people have the access to being able to vote, and it should not be a difficult process.
It shouldn't be. And, and it's the unfortunate thing is when you talk about what all took place in the late 50s and in the 60s, the voting right bills and being able, let's go even further back. Women had issues with being able to vote.
Black people had issues
with being able to vote. And then it was black people.
Yeah.
So, there's been a progression, but it's unfortunate that after a century of time, we're still having to deal with this.
Yeah, and it's crazy because you think that, I was watching a movie the other night about how when African Americans first got the right to vote, that they would go down to vote in places like Alabama, Mississippi, and they'll put a jar up there with a whole bunch of jelly beans and say, if you can tell me how many jelly beans in this jar, you can vote, right?
Right.
The reality of us being able to just guess the amount wasn't possible. It was probably possible, but it wasn't happening, right?
Right.
So even from that perspective, I feel like a lot of what some of the states are doing is that they may not be putting a jelly bean jar in front of us, but they're putting obstacles in the way of preventing us from being able to vote, of making it more accessible. And definitely doing now, during this time of COVID, we should really be trying to make it to where people are not having to risk, whether they're going to put their life at risk versus being able to vote. You know what I'm saying? That it shouldn't be a challenge of both.
I agree. And, and I tell you, it is disheartening. And they want you to be disheartened. They want you to be in a position where you feel like it's not even worth the time or the struggle to get out there and vote. So you will be so downtrodden and beat up with this issue that you just don't go. And it works in their favor. So if you're a person of color, definitely you need to get out there and make sure that your vote counts.
Yes, sir.
You got to make it worthwhile. There's been people who have fought and died previously, and since we happen to still be in this particular struggle, but for this particular issue, after all these years, if it's just the fact that we got to fight for it, we just gonna have to continue to fight.
And the thing I would say too is that I have to give a shout out to so many different organizations here in Georgia. I can speak for Georgia, and I can speak for Florida and Texas. That I know have been really busting their behind to make, for example, and recently in Georgia there was a stat that just came out that between the ages of 18 and 24, they've gotten over 70,000 people registered to vote, and don't quote me on that, but it was just the fact of these organizations that are out here fighting for voting rights have been putting initiative into not only educating people on the new laws, but at the same time making sure that people are getting registered to vote and people are not discouraged by it. And it's young people that we're gearing it towards, and I love that.
Yes.
I absolutely love that, because we have to get young people involved. We have to help them understand the importance of their vote. I remember during the election when President Trump was running against Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, I remember being in D.C. for training, and I thought it was so important that my vote counted that I flew back just to vote for one day and then flew back to New York. Right. Because it's just that important. And not only that, I think from an African American perspective, we have to remember that we stand on the shoulders of people who where we not getting beat for it. John Lewis crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge and got beat.
Yeah.
Literally for me to be able to have the right to vote. And when I don't vote, or when I don't try to fight for that right or keep that right in place, then I think I throw shade to their legacy.
Right. You know, I now when you said that, made me question everything that what we saw in the, you know, in history tells us that it was all in the South.
Right. And it's still all in the South.
Well, yeah, and it's still Southern based.
Mm-hmm.
However, we in recent years we started seeing voter suppression issues pop up in the North, in the Northwest, on the West Coast, just all over the country. Areas that typically have been held silent. You know, they really just didn't fight. Against it. It just business as usual. But
Right.
and nowadays you start seeing that these things are taking place all across the country, and it's very unfortunate that that we still have to deal with this, man. And that, you know, and it really kind of, well, it upsets me. I'll just say it like that.
I would even look at
it's
too,
frustrating.
another thing that I find amazing is like we have to remember like the power of voting. Like it's just not enough to say, okay, that person who I vote for is going to determine whether or not I get a COVID check, right? So look at California. We can use California as a prime example. They have people, you're from California, have elected people who placed within the Constitution of California that, hey, if you can get 11% of people to say that governor needs to be recalled, that person can be brought up on ballot and can be recalled. The governor can be recalled. So right now, California is getting ready to recall their governor. And he won with over 63% of the vote. But 11% of the people who did not vote for him are able to decide whether or not his future, to bring him back to the ballot.
Right.
And it's so crazy because even though he's the only, person running on the Democratic side, there's so many candidates out there that right now, and some of them are not that, and there's some Democrats. There are some people running on the Democratic side. So he can literally lose the election because of the fact that it's a majority vote, right? So he can lose the election because he may get 48% of the vote and somebody else covers 49% of the vote because there's so many people in the election.
Right.
Like he can literally lose the election. And we have to remember that when we vote for people like state representatives, for state senators, they control the Constitution for our state, right? They can make adjustments. We look at Fulton County right now. Fulton County here in Georgia. The state passed the law that changed the way we're able to vote, and where that gives themselves the power to go in and take over an election county or take over an election office if they feel like there's some irregularities in their way of counting votes, right? So now they're trying to take over Fulton County. Why is Fulton County so important to the state of Georgia? It's the largest African American vote in the state of Georgia.
That's right.
Right? If they can take over Fulton County, that's a huge deal, and we can't allow it to happen.
Right. Voter suppression. Well, I tell you, they are hard at work.
But the crazy part is, think about it like this: it was not an issue. None of this came up, right? None of this was talked about. None of this was an issue until black people went out and voted.
Right.
The moment we went out and actually voted, now there's issues with voter suppression. Now there's a problem because if they're out there voting, we can't have that, right?
Right.
And we got to be so careful because if we don't pay attention to history, if we don't know our history, then history has a way of repeating itself, and we can't fix the mistakes of something that we don't understand.
So someone like, and I'll just use him as an example since he just became a senator, Warnock.
Mm-hmm.
If he chooses to run for governor for the state of Georgia, that's going to be a big issue, and voter suppression will come into play on their behalf if they can flip Fulton County.
Yeah.
And you have enough small counties that will make a difference throughout the state.
Yeah, but
if you can get one or two large counties to go along with that, someone like Senator Warnock,
who's running for re-election this year
as a senator, but if he was to run for governor,
but even if Stacey Abrams decided to run, Fulton County is a huge county.
Yes,
and it will make a difference in this election.
I was going to say that midterms are rolling up on us, and midterms are the most, if not I would say midterms are probably the most the one election that is most prevalent to our society, mainly because it deals with your community first.
Right.
It's city, it's county, it's state, and those people that you that are running for election are the ones who make the policy for your state. And with them, you definitely have to find someone that you feel you can trust or back.
Vote your issues.
Absolutely. And I tell you, it'll make a difference as to who is able to get in the office and what kind of law they're going to pass for your city, county, and state. With that being said, again, do everything that you can, not only to get registered, but get out there and actually place your vote. Learn and study what the issues are in your county, in your city, in your community, within your state. That way you have some knowledge on it. It's time out for us to just sit back and wait, and wait and be reactive when you can be proactive now when the midterms are still in front of us, so we can still make
a difference. Yeah,
absolutely. And if that means going out and doing a march, if that means holding up a protester sign, or in protest, if that means just camping out the night before at the voting,
or knocking on doors and making sure people in your neighborhood are registered to vote.
Load up your car, pick up truck, and do like they used to do back in the day. And
I think it was Reverend Shannon who said that next time we go out on a date with somebody, right? First thing we need to ask them, but before we do anything, is before we pay for the bill, before we take them out, be like, wait a minute, are you registered to vote, right? It has to become that important because of the fact that we have to understand that if we don't take it seriously, like if we don't pay attention to this, then it will pass us by. So, I mean, we'll be out there this week. We'll be in D.C.
Absolutely.
Our staff will be here in Atlanta. And we're going to stand up. And I think that for those of us who have a platform that we can stand on, it's increasingly important that we use that platform to benefit those in which the community in which we serve. And at Black Push, we serve a community. I mean, voting rights should not be a black issue or a white issue. Voting rights should be an issue, period. Everybody deserves the right to vote.
So let me ask this question. How did it become just a black issue? And that's based on history, right?
Yeah. I think that everything now, when it comes down to America politics, everything is black or white. Right? If a person gets shot by an officer, and a black person gets shot by an officer, we stand in the streets and we yell and we protest. If a white person gets shot by an officer, we kind of act like it just doesn't exist, right?
You never hear about it.
We never really hear about it, put it like that. But at the end of the day, I am just as upset when a black person gets shot by a police officer as I am when a white person gets shot by a police officer, as I am when an Asian person gets shot by a police officer.
That's right.
And when I say this to say that also too, that but I also understand I'm the kind of person that also wants to see the details of what happened in the case, right? Because there are some officer-involved shootings that are justified. And I know that people don't want to hear that. I know that's going to get me chopped. But at the end of the day, these officers are trying to go home just like anybody else,
that's right?
And if their life is at risk, they have a right to protect their life, right? But at the same time, I think that we give officers a lot of resources besides a gun. And if they can tase somebody, or they can mace somebody, or they can restrain somebody, and that person is not a threat to them. For example, we've seen cases where people were running away from a police officer who were not a threat, and the police officer shot them right in the back. Right? That's unjustified. Right. There's nothing humane about that. We see a George Floyd who is not a threat to anybody, but yet you keep your knee on his neck. We see it in Baltimore, Maryland, where they set the guy behind. They set him in the back of the paddy wagon, whatever they want to call it, and he died in the back of the paddy wagon, right? So those things are unjustified. But when there's a place where an officer's trying to just protect his life and a person is a threat to them and other people, then yeah, we have to look at those cases one by one, and we can't just yell about it, scream about it, because at the end of the day, that's what the police force is designed to do. Now, whether we need to have a conversation about gun rights, whether we need to have a conversation about access to guns. I mean, I've traveled around the world, and in some countries, like in Paris, the people don't really have guns, nor does the officer. I mean, in London, the officers don't really have guns. All they have is
billy clubs.
Right, and some mace or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But you don't see officers walking around with a gun or going into their trunk and pulling out like shotguns, stuff like that. I mean, we don't see officers with military tanks on the street. like we're in a war zone. And we've seen that even during the Baltimore, Maryland riots when Obama was president. You've seen officers in tanks on the streets against their own people. When the last president wanted to cross the street to go to a church, they turned out tear gas on peaceful protesters. Like those kind of things are
photo op.
For a photo op, right? So I mean, we have to. I think as a nation, we have to do some soul searching, because and you're a gun owner, right?
I am.
And you know, other people in the office here are gun owners, right? At the same time, it's like I get it. I love going to the gun range, right? We've gone to the gun. I think we've gone to the gun range before together.
All right.
But at the same time, it's like, do we really need as many guns in society as we have? I mean, there's more guns in America than there are people, literally. And that just tells you about where we've come as a society. And I remember like 2 or 3 years ago, during the beginning of COVID, when I think you both purchased during that time, and we were, I was standing in line, and there were so many people in line. I'm like, why is everybody in line? Like, it was a long wait. And people were just scared. They were saying what was going on in the community. They were worried about, people not having jobs, and it was just a scary time. But has the increase in guns in society really helped? And that's probably a whole nother topic. But has it really helped anything? No. I mean, we're seeing people getting killed and murdered in DeKalb County and Fulton County. There was, in DeKalb County alone yesterday, it was 2 mass murders in DeKalb County. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a mother and father who were found dead in their car. Their kids gonna wake up this morning and they have no parents to depend on. You know what I'm saying? All that kind of stuff is heartbreaking. And as a person, I mean, I don't know how we can be saints or Christians or anything and not feel sympathy for those kind of issues.
Right. It's very unfortunate, but I tell you, at the end of the day, the media has put out there so much so in such a way that it has riled up certain groups or just people in general here in the United States, that the fear factor. And if you can get, people, gun makers and ammunition manufacturing plants have made a grip of money because of the fear factor. And it all generates money for a certain group of people, and that you have to be able and understand and read between the lines as to what is really going on. And if you're looking at just your basic CNN, Fox, NBC, CBS, ABC stations, and you're relying on that to get your news media source. There are other avenues and platforms. Some of which have absolutely no agenda. They're not going to, make any money, and they're not going to lose any money.
Right.
But when you're looking at advertising dollars and this and the other thing, we have to take into consideration what is coming from this particular source, and whether or not how you choose to apply that information into your daily life, and if you want to believe it or not. And all that needs to be taken into consideration. And you have folks who swear by Fox News that it is the gospel truth.
Yeah.
When
MSNBC or CNN.
Right, all of them. Mm-hmm. There's always a certain group that I only watch
so-and-so.
X, Y, and Z. And the problem with that is well, one is closed-minded, but two, you're not even taking you want your way to be the right way. And that is simply just not the truth of the matter. Because there's always, even if you get in an argument with someone, there is always 2 sides to the story. Yeah. So with that being said, you can't just rely on one news media source. If you have to, check what's that, BBC? Mm-hmm. And look at the news,
NPR,
NPR, and look at it from a different perspective, from the outside looking in.
Right.
When I used to live overseas, that's how I was able to discover more about myself and more about this country, is because of their perspective and what they saw of the United States. Really showed me a difference into what I know, what I grew up in as a resident here in the States, and then being in a foreign country and looking back into the States and getting information and my understanding of said information, and how I started to view life differently because of that. And we really do have to take a look at things on the other side of the glass.
The bottle effect, like what Pastor Fritz brought up at the One Accord Conference.
Yes.
The bottle effect. Like, don't just look at it from your angle. Go step around and look at it from another angle. But we're going to get ready to end. But I do want to leave it this. My grandma used to always say to us, she said that only a fool listens to one side of the story. Because if you ever want to know the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. And I think that's just so important that we are able to hear each other and hear each other's side. So that's the reason why, like, I don't knock nobody who like MSNBC, but I don't knock nobody who watch Fox, right? But at the same time, I watch Fox and MSNBC because I want to hear what both sides are saying.
Absolutely.
So we want to invite everybody. Remember that our business of the week for Newbie Corp is Ari's Biscuit Bar.
Yes.
I think our logo's up there again. You can check her out at Ari's Biscuit Bar on Instagram, Twitter. You can find her on Facebook. You can email her. I think it's arisbiscuitbar@gmail.com. And we have more information that will be going on our Newbie Corp website today. And for those who are not doing anything tomorrow on the 28th, which is Saturday, get out to one of these rallies. There's one going on in Atlanta. There's one going on in Washington. There's one going on in Miami. There's something going on around you. There's virtual events going on. Go online. Look up March on Washington. Look up March for Voting Rights. And get involved. Let your voice be heard. And we'll be out there making sure our voice is heard. So join us for the fight. And until we see you again next Monday, please tune in Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Where we'll be having Push Talk. And next week we'll be talking about gun rights. Do we really need as many guns as we have in America? So Ryan looking at me like, man, you ain't taking my gun.